Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this afternoon's meeting of Nithsdale Divisional Licensing Board, today Friday the 24th of June 2022, commencing at 2 p.m. If I can turn your attention to the agenda, please, members. In terms of item number 1, can you appoint a convener, please? Would a member like to nominate someone as a convener? I can see Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thanks, Caroline. Yeah, I nominate Councillor Hislop, the convener.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. And do we have a seconder there, please, for Councillor Hislop?
I'll second that, Caroline. I'm
Thank you so
struggling
much,
with the camera here.
Thank you, Councillor Little. So, Councillor Hislop, you've been nominated and appointed convener.
Right, thank you, everyone. Hopefully I can deal with the business efficiently and effectively. So we'll now move on to item 2, which is...
Sorry, Councillor I beg your pardon, convener. I do believe you've got a little bit of narrative sent to you just to read out in relation to the recording being live streamed.
Not on me.
Not on you. Cheryl, can you perhaps email the convener that narrative, please?
I'll just email over now.
Thank you.
Right, I've got one. Maybe I did have it, just hadn't opened my emails. Right, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed. Could I remind members to follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off their video when you are not addressing the meeting. Should you wish to contribute to any item, you should write speak in the Teams chat function or raise your virtual hand and you will be invited to speak in order. Should your question or issue be raised by a previous speaker, please withdraw your request so that we deal with the business as efficiently as possible. Right, I'll now move on to item 2. Caroline, could you take us through this set and apologies, please?
Thank you, convener. So we have no apologies and we are quorate with 4 members today, and just to request your approval for members' remote participation.
I'm happy to approve members' remote participation. Now move on to item 3, which is declarations of interest. Councillor Little.
Thanks, Councillor Hislop. No declaration of interest. I was just going to ask that Councillor Barretti turn his camera off, please. Thank you.
Right, you are. I don't see any other hands up. No. Right, move on to item 4, minute of meeting of the 23rd of March 2022. Do we have enough members to actually move and second this? I'm happy to move the minute, but Caroline, can we?
Convener, you can certainly move the minute and we can note on the record if there's nobody to second it. I do realise that those members who were present at that meeting in March are not those that are here today.
Right. Councillor Campbell?
Yeah, I was on the same point. I'm just wondering who was actually at the previous meeting. Like yourself, convener, you're probably the only one there, so I don't know if we take that forward, but yeah.
I was actually an apology for the last meeting, I think, as well.
Oh, yeah, so you were.
I think what we can do, convener, is with your approval, is just carry this over to the next meeting and take governance advice.
Right, yeah, no problem. We'll do that. Now, the next 2 or 3 items are granted under delegated authority. The way I've dealt with these in the past is if there's any questions, if members could raise their hand. Otherwise, I would ask you just to note the 3 items. and that way it gets us through to the sort of meatier items later in the agenda, if everyone's happy with that. So we'll start with item 5, Licensing Scotland Act 2005, applications for occasional licences and extended hours. Is there any questions on this report? I don't see any hands going up. Can we take this as noted?
Noted.
Noted.
Right, thank you. Item 6 is the Licensing Scotland Act 2005, applications for minor variations granted under the Delegate Authority. Any questions on item 6? Don't see any hands coming up. We're happy to note this item.
Happy to note, convener.
And item 7, Licensing Scotland Act 2005, applications for transfer of premises licence granted under delegated authority, here for noting. Any questions? Right, don't see any hands going up. Can we take this as noted?
Noted.
Right.
Noted.
Right, thanks, folks. Right, we'll now move on to item 8, and which is a Licensing Act 2005 personal licence application, Caelan Maloney. And Caroline, could I ask you to go through the procedure today and talk to the report, please?
Yes, of course, convener. Can I just first of all check that we have Caelan, I beg your pardon, Caelan Maloney with us today, and that he can hear me okay?
Yes, I'm present. I can hear you perfectly. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have a representative from Police Scotland?
Yes, Sergeant McKay, I'm here.
Thank you, Sergeant McKay. So members, this is an application for a personal licence in respect of Mr. Caelan Maloney. And you'll recall that the personal licence authorises the licence holder to supervise or authorise the sale of alcohol. The reason this application is before yourselves today is that the police are recommending refusal of the application, as their view is that it is necessary for the purposes of the security of the licence and objective of securing public safety. So in terms of procedure, convener, I would suggest that you allow the police to read to their letter and then questions from members, and then allow Mr. Maloney to represent his case and address the issues raised by the police in their letter, and then have questions from members, and thereafter sum up by the police and then sum up by Mr. Maloney. Just to advise Mr. Maloney, once you have the opportunity to sum up, thereafter you may no longer contribute to discussions, and thereafter I would suggest you go into session, convener. And of course I am here to assist and give guidance and legal advice as needed. Thank you.
Right, so Sergeant McKay, would you like to take us through the Chief Constable's submission?
Thank you. The application is a relation for a grant of a personal licence for Caelan Michael Maloney. In terms of section 733B of the Licensing Scotland Act 2005, I give notice that based upon the information provided, and as far as the Chief Constable is aware, the applicant has been convicted of the following relevant offence. On the 5th of November 2019 at Dumfries GP Court, crime being the Road Traffic Act 1988 section 51A, which is drink driving, the disposal being a fine of £200, disqualification for 3 years and his licence endorsed. Unable to confirm the existence of any foreign office in respect of the applicant. In terms of section 73(5) 2005 Act, the Chief Constable provides the following information in relation to applicant which is relevant to the board's consideration. On Thursday, the 3rd of October 2019 at 03:15 hours in the morning, police were tasked to trace a white Volkswagen motor vehicle as it had been suspected that the driver was under the influence of alcohol. The vehicle was traced a short time later and stopped in Dumfries Town Centre, and the driver was identified as Caelan Michael Maloney, who stated that he was the owner of the vehicle. In speaking with Mr. Maloney, officers detected a strong smell of alcohol from his breath. Mr. Maloney was asked by police if he had consumed alcohol in the last 20 minutes, which he had replied no. He was thereafter required under terms of Section 6 of the Road Traffic Act 1988 to provide a specimen breath analysis, to which he agreed. He subsequently provided a positive breath test and was thereafter arrested and conveyed to Lawburn Street Police Station in Dumfries. He was subject to the drink drive procedure by means of an approved device and provided a lower reading of 39 micrograms of alcohol and 100 millilitres of breath. At 03:57 hours on the same date, Mr Maloney was caution charged with Section 5 of the Road Traffic Act 1988 and thereafter bailed to appear at Dumfries Sheriff Court on Tuesday the 29th of October 2019. In light of the above, the Chief Constable considers it is necessary for the purposes of securing public safety, protecting members of the public and other road users that an application be refused. Thank you.
Right. Any questions, Mr Maloney, for the Chief Constable's representative?
No, that's all fine. Thank you.
Right. Members, any questions for Sergeant McKee? Don't see any hands going up. Right. If there's no questions, Mr Maloney, would you like to speak on your application?
Yes, absolutely. So my original date of sentence was the 5th of November 2019, and I was told in the court that if I did a course with ISM Psychological Services, which is the drink driving rehabilitation course, that my disqualification period would be reduced by 9 months, which I have completed that course with ISM Psychological Services, which is why I was under the impression that my disqualification was spent, or my sentence was spent, which is hence why I then went ahead and applied for the personal license. I see that if I had, having done the course, my sentence should have been disqualified to the 5th of March, so it should have been spent when I actually did apply for my application. Other than that, I agree with everything that the officers have said, and yeah, I can only just try and move forward from here.
Is there any questions for Mr Maloney? Don't see any hands going up. Oh, Councillor Campbell?
Yeah, sorry about that, Convener. I'm having trouble trying to get the little hand to come up. Yeah, it was just to ask me, Mr Maloney, was this a first-time offence on drink driving?
So I did have a drink driving offence in England, and this was, the exact date was the 29th of November 2011, which is why I was suspended for a 3-year period, the second time round being caught in Scotland, because it was 2 offences within a 10-year period. Which is why I was classed as a high-risk offender when I was in court and I was sentenced, which is why I got 3 years. So my first offence was in London. I can give you all of the information of that as well. I've got it in front of me if you need me. But that was 29th of November 2011. And then my most recent one was the 5th of November 2019. On the first occasion, I wasn't offered the drink driving rehabilitation course, whereas the second time I was, which is the course that I've completed, which should have reduced my disqualification by 9 months. So the answer to your question is no, it is my second driving offence, and it's my only criminal offences. So I've got those 2, and both of them are driving, which I know doesn't look good. But in my defence, my second offence, if I was actually still in England, I would have been under the limit, because they have a 0 tolerance here, whereas they're a little ever so slightly more lenient in England. I know it's no excuse, but I have done this drink driving rehabilitation course, and I've learned a lot from it. So I feel like I've definitely, passed that part of my life.
Thanks very much, Mr Maloney. Thanks, Convener.
Thank you, John Campbell.
Is there any other questions for Mr Maloney? Don't see any hands up. Mr Maloney, the one previously you had in England, what sort of levels over the limit were you when you had the original incident?
Right, so the original incident was driving a motor vehicle when alcohol level above limit, and this was on the 13th of the 11th at Walpole Avenue. Drove a motor vehicle on a road, namely Walpole Avenue, after consuming alcohol to the proportion of it in my breath, namely 59 milligrams of alcohol in 100 milliliters of breath. So I think that should answer your question. So it was 59 micrograms, sorry, of alcohol in 100 milliliters of breath, whereas my most recent one was 39.
Yeah, right. Thank you for that.
No problem. Thank you.
If there's no further questions, Sergeant McKee, would you like to sum up your case?
Thank you. Mr Maloney will obviously be responsible for the sale of alcohol and be working alongside alcohol. The offence that we've disclosed obviously shows a poor and lack of judgment on his behalf.
And Mr Maloney, would you like to sum up your case?
I have to agree with the office. It was absolutely pure lack of judgment on my part. However, having done this course, I feel like it's really sort of, taught me a lot in the sense that absolutely everything that I did was wrong, and it's not to ever happen again. And yes, I do understand I'm selling alcohol, but as I say, this has happened just over 3 years ago, and yeah, I've absolutely learned my lesson. So I hope you could reconsider.
We'll now move into session. Over to members. We have the application and the objection from the Chief Constable. Caroline?
Yes, Convener, apologies for interjecting here. If it's helpful, I can just give a wee bit of guidance here to assist members, if you wish.
Yeah, please do.
Thank you. So we're not talking about spent convictions here, we're talking about relevant offences. So Mr Maloney's been convicted of a relevant offence, so the Police Scotland have come to yourselves with that relevant offence. Okay, now when we talk about relevant offences, it's relevant in terms of the relevant offences regulations. So the law is saying that it's relevant. However, your principal legal remit is in relation to the sale of alcohol. So on the one hand, you've got the relevant offences that are disclosing, the relevant offences regulations are disclosing lots of relevant offences, one of which is breach of Section 5 of the Road Traffic Act. And then on the other hand, you've got your principal legal remit is regulating the sale of alcohol from licensed premises. So there is a wee bit tension between the two, and it would be up to yourselves to analyse that conviction in terms of its relevancy to the sale of alcohol with regard to licensed premises, the severity of the offence, how old it is, the penalty, mitigating factors, etc. But I would just urge your members to look at the grounds of refusal here, keeping in mind that your principal legal remit here is regulating the sale of alcohol from licensed premises. So the police view is that they're of the opinion that the application should be refused because it is necessary to refuse the application for the purposes of the secure and public safety licensing objective. It is necessary. Now, if something's necessary, that's a high threshold to make. It's necessary to refuse. Why is it necessary? Have the police told you why it's necessary? And also, I just wanted to say, members, a wee bit about the securing public safety licensing objective. It's a licensing objective. So the objective is licensing. It's preceded by the word licensing, so it's not a standalone general public interest, public safety objective. It's a licensing objective, which means it's an objective pertaining to the sale of alcohol. So when you're thinking about securing public safety, you must think about it in relation to the sale of alcohol from licensed premises. So we'd maybe think about is the public safety. What do we mean by public? We might mean customers in the bar or licensed premises, or others out with those licensed premises, the wider public. But then you would have to start, if we were talking about public out with licensed premises, you would be looking at establishing a nexus and a link between the sale of alcohol on those licensed premises and how members of the public are being imperilled. For example, if you've sold alcohol to an intoxicated person in the bar and then they leave a bar and they come in harm's way, we're looking at the link. So it's just to say there's a necessity requirement here in law. Is it necessary to refuse? Have the police said why they think it's necessary? They've said there's been a lack of judgment. Is the law concerned with a lack of judgment? But crucially here, members, we're talking about securing public safety as a licensing objective. It's to do with public safety in relation to the sale of alcohol in licensed premises, not about imperiling other road users on a road. Your principal legal remit is the sale of alcohol in licensed premises. I hope that just assists a little. Thank you.
I think that's Caroline's hand that's up. Right.
Beg your pardon.
With that sort of advice there, I know personally when I looked at this, I think consideration has to be given to the licensing outcomes, and I don't know if it meets the criteria about road users. If we're looking at securing public safety, protecting members of the public and other road users, I would suggest that was more to do with the actual vehicle licence. I think Mr. Maloney needs to consider, if we are minded to support his application, that it is a very important role that he has in actually selling alcohol. And I don't think there's enough there to refuse the application, but I'm willing to listen to other members. Councillor Little.
Thanks, convener. Yes, I am of the same opinion. I think if this was an application for a taxi driving licence, it may be a completely different conversation we were having. I understand why the police have to come forward and give us this information. They're legally obliged to do so that we have a whole background, but I'm not sure this background report is relevant to the actual reason for the application, or what Mr. Maloney is actually applying for. So I'm not sure we have any solid grounds to refuse or any sort of reasons to refuse. So I think we're probably leaning towards moving to approve.
Caroline, you want to come back in?
Yes, apologies, convener, just needed to interject there. You're absolutely correct, Councillor Little. The police are legally obliged to put to yourselves those relevant offences. Excuse me. However, they don't necessarily in law need to object to the application. So they've undergone those further steps by giving you extra information and objecting, but they're not legally obliged to object, which in this case they are. Thank you.
Councillor Beretti.
Good afternoon. Ivor. Yes, it's for the first case. It's quite an interesting one, and I agree with Tracy that on the grounds it doesn't look as if there is an awful lot. Being this first time, I'm seeking advice, and clearly I'm listening to all the advice, and certainly from yourself with a bit more of experience in this. I wanted to ask what age the chap was, but if he's been driving since around about 2011, he's obviously not an 18-year-old, so that he must have learned something from life. Yeah, I'm leaning towards what Tracy was saying and yourself in that sense.
Right, yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Beretti. Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thanks very much, convener. I mean, we're looking to see if this applicant is fit and proper person to hold the licence. I think he's probably not fit and proper person to be driving, considering he's had a few offences. But if he's been through that additional course, I suppose he may have learned a lesson or two in being that case. But I don't believe that we have grounds to refuse this as a licence application. Thanks, convener.
Caroline, did you want to come back in?
Yes, it was just to follow up on what Councillor Campbell just there said. So the police are, in their view, recommending refusal of this application on the ground that it's necessary to refuse the application for the purposes of the secure and public safety licensing objective. Now, the second other option for ground of refusal, which you could consider that's not cited in the police letter, would be that having regard to the licensing objectives, the applicant is not a fit and proper person. This is a different test. It's a lot narrower test than on the civic government side. It's not a freestanding fit and proper person test. It's preceded by having regard to the licensing objectives. So again, you're tying that fit and proper person test into a licensing objective. And again, the licensing objective must be related to the sale of alcohol. Thanks.
Right, with that, I think there's unanimity that on this occasion we should grant Mr. Maloney his personal licence. But I think Mr. Maloney needs to realise that we take into consideration all relevant offences, and I wouldn't like to think we would see you back up in front of us with a further conviction for a relevant offence. And one thing you have to remember, when you have a personal licence, that personal licence sticks with you, is it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it's a responsibility that you carry now, and we would hope that you make sure that you take full responsibility in your actions when going forward and when we pass this application. So if there's no one otherwise minded, Caroline, could you confirm the outcome for Mr. Maloney?
Thank you, convener. So just confirming with yourself that that's unanimous agreement to grant. So thank you. So Mr. Maloney, the board has unanimously agreed to grant your application for a personal licence, and a member of our team will be in touch with you in early course to confirm that decision in writing and get your licence out to you. Is that clear?
Thank you very much. I appreciate everybody's time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Now move on to item 9, Licensing Scotland Act 2005, review of personal licence, Demi Lee Hines, report by the clerk. Caroline, I think there's some additional information came in.
Yes.
Regarding adjournment, if you'd just like to clarify that for us,
yes, please. Thank you, convener. So the agent, in respect of the personal licence holder, Miss Demi Hines, he's been in touch with me personally, and he's asked he's formally requested whether this consideration of this matter can be adjourned to your next hearing on the 26th of August this year, to give them more time to prepare for their case. He's advised that he has had sight of CCTV that rebuts the narrative of the police, and it's just getting that CCTV to him to prepare the case and also get it to us. So the request is to formally adjourn consideration, which is a recommendation that I would make to enable Miss Demi Hines in terms of fair hearing to prepare her case. Thank you.
Just one point of clarity, is there any time limit on dealing with this, as it's a request under the review?
It's a Section 84A convener, so there's no timeline in which the board would be obliged to have a first hearing, and I do understand that the police have also been notified of the request to formally adjourn consideration. I can see Councillor Little's got her hand up.
Councillor Little.
Thank you, convener. It was just, I'm not objecting to this being deferred, but just for a little bit of clarity, what happens with the licence in the meantime? I mean, I don't know how long that this is going to be adjourned for, but does this licence stay in place until then, this personal licence?
Yes, Councillor Little, it remains in place and it would come before yourselves at your next hearing date on the 26th of August. Thank you.
I take it members are happy to adjourn this till the 26th of August.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you for that. We'll move now on to item 10. Licence in Scotland Act 2005, application for variation of premises licence, Spar, Gilbury Road, Georgetown, Dumfries. Caroline?
Thank you, Convener. I'm just checking that we do have the agent here with us today, Mr. Michael McDougall. And you can hear me okay, Mr. McDougall?
I can. I can. Thank you very much.
Forgive me, Convener, I'm actually starting to lose my voice for some unknown reason. So this is an application for a major variation, and that's the reason it's before yourselves. The application was received on the 28th of April 2022. We've gone through the consultation procedures and also the site notice display, and I can confirm that signed confirmation of site notice has been received. There are no objections and no representations in respect of this application. The police have no adverse comments and the LSO has no adverse comments, and the application itself, Convener, is detailed at Appendix 1 to this report. So in terms of procedure, I would suggest, Convener, that you may wish to hear from the LSO just to speak to their report, any questions, and then allow Mr. McDougall, the agent, an opportunity to present his case on behalf of his client, followed by any questions, and then allow Mr. McDougall to sum up on behalf of his client before you go into session. Thank you.
Mr. Collins, have you anything you would like to add to your report or anything you want to highlight?
Nothing further, Convener. Hopefully it's self-explanatory and nothing further from this side.
Is there any questions for Mr. Collins from the members? Don't see any hands going up. Mr. McDougall, would you like to talk to your application, please?
Hey, thank you, Convener. Aye, Peter. I'm sure CJ Lang and the Spar label itself will be well known to your honours. They're Scotland's largest independent retailer and have been since 1919. There's about 300 stores across Scotland, including this one in Dumfries. As far as I'm aware, your honours, they don't cause police or licensing standards officers across the country any issues, so I would suggest that's positive. In terms of why this application has been made, I think a wee bit of background might be useful. Coming out of the pandemic, the licence holder decided that it would be sensible to review all the premises licences across Scotland to make sure that they reflected the operation of a modern retailer. And also, as we know, some of the customer behaviour changed during the pandemic, etc. So that's why this application's here. As you'll see, it's to make sure there's permission for the lottery, scratch card, home deliveries, etc. I'm pleased to see that there's no adverse comment from police or licence standards, and there's no public objections either. With that in mind, Your Honours, I would perhaps just commend the application, move grant, subject to any questions you may have.
Is there any questions for Mr. McDougall? I'll just pause a wee while just in case takes a wee while sometimes for the hands to go up. I don't see any. Would you like to sum up, Mr. McDougall?
Thank you. I don't have anything further to add, given there's no objections, etc. Thank you.
Right. If we move into deliberation, then I think it's quite clear that this is a change in activity, as in customer activity within the premises, and we're just looking to regulate or regularise, I think they say, what's happening on the licence with what's happening on the ground. It seems to be an acceptable change to me, and I'm happy to support it. Councillor Little.
Thank you, Convener. As the same opinion as yourself, there's no adverse comments, there's no negative responses, I would be inclined to approve for granting this.
Is anyone otherwise minded? Take it that's general approval. There's no hands going up. Caroline, can you relay the decision, please?
Yes, thank you, Convener. Just confirming with yourself that's a unanimous grant. So, Mr McDougall, you've just heard that the board's granted the application in its entirety and you'll be notified in the early course. Thank you.
I'm obliged, Your Honour. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr McDougall. We'll now move on to item 11, Licence Scotland Act 2005, application for variation of premises licence, Douglas Arms, Briarvenel, Dumfries. Caroline, would you like to take us through this report?
Yes, thank you, Convener. I believe we have a Leslie Ross who's with us today to speak to the application. She's the current premises licence holder. Is Miss Ross with us today?
Yeah, I'm present, Caroline.
And can you hear me okay, Miss Ross? I assume that you can, given that you've just replied, but just checking you can hear me okay. So, members...
Yep, loud and clear.
Thank you. So, members, this is an application for a major variation in respect of the Douglas Arms. The premises licence holder is Leslie Ross, who is here with us today. The application was received on the 28th of April 2022. The board has gone through consultation, and I can confirm in relation to display of the site notice, contrary to what the report states, the signed confirmation of site notice has indeed been received. I can confirm that there are no adverse comments from Police Scotland. There are no objections to the application. There are no adverse comments, no representations received. The application itself is detailed at Appendix 1. The LSO report advising no adverse comment is detailed at Appendix 2. So, Convener, in terms of suggested procedure, I would suggest that you hear from the LSO to speak to his report. Any questions thereafter? Allow Miss Ross to present her case and speak to her application with any questions thereafter, and then allow Miss Ross the opportunity to sum up her application and then go into session. Thank you.
Over to you, Mr. Collins. Is there anything you'd like to add to your report or anything you would like to highlight?
Thanks, Convener. Hopefully the report is self-explanatory. This one has taken a bit of time to come to the table. The initial application arrived around about the same time as COVID. We've worked very closely with Leslie Ross throughout the procedure. We work well together, and I've got nothing further or adverse to add to the report. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Collins? Don't see any hat. Well, Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. It's not so much a question, but an observation on Appendix 2, number 10. It says meeting and conference facilities, bar, meals, receptions, club, dance facilities, theatre, films, gaming. I mean, my perception of the Dougie Arms is that it's quite a small place. I mean, how do you manage to fit all these in? It's just purely an observation. I don't know if you'd be able to answer that, Convener, but it was just an observation, as I say. Thanks.
It's maybe something we could ask the applicant.
Possibly, yes.
They might be able to expand on that. If there's no other points for Mr. Collins, Ms. Ross, would you like to speak to your application?
Absolutely. Do you prefer camera on or off when I'm speaking?
It's up to yourself.
Doesn't matter. Am I popping up? Yeah, there I am. Yeah, it was just when we took over the pub, we inherited a very out-of-date licence, and so we needed to get that updated for modern operation. So yeah, working with Michael and Cheryl, we worked out the application. Councillor Campbell's question about, yeah, we are a small pub, but the idea is that we need to have all of these things covered. For example, We've had, we've had approaches about poetry nights, or about small monologues, like a play a pie in a pint sort of vibes, things like that. So although we're a small pub, we do try and offer a lot of different things. And the advice from licensing when you apply for a major variation is, because you're paying £400, is if you think you might ever use it, you might be asked to use it, you might need it, it's something that you could provide, even if you don't currently provide it, that you should include that in your application to save you coming back to the licensing board in 6 months or a year or 2 years to add something that somebody's asked you to do. So when it says things like gaming, that's just, we have, people could be playing dominoes, they could be playing darts, obviously we've not got a pool table. Theatre, it could just be a 1 or 2 person performance, or it could be stand-up comedy, it could be poetry. So we did look through everything, and it was all things that we may provide in the future, or we may be approached to provide. So for example, if we have a wake, although we're not going to be running bar meals, if we have a wake, we may provide soup and sandwiches or whatever that we make in the snug. So it's just things like that. So I'm aware it sounds like we're turning into a huge pub metropolis, but that isn't the plan. Happy to answer any other questions.
Are you happy with that answer, John?
Trying to get the mic off there. Yes, convener, I'm very happy. Yeah, it's just when you think of a place being small, and then you think of all the entertainment that you're going to try and involve in that small place, you think it must be like the TARDIS or something like that. But thank you.
Unfortunately not. Yeah.
It's one question I've got with regard to the addition of adult entertainment within the core licensed hours. Now, later on, you're also including children and young people in the bar area. Would you be happy to exclude children and young people when you have adult entertainment within the facility? I don't know if we could condition that, or whether it would be part of the wording of your application, but I'll clarify that with the clerk later on if that's okay. But what's your sort of view on that?
Absolutely. We were advised to include adult entertainment in case we had like a comedy night or something where material might be more suited to an adult audience. It wasn't something I'd particularly considered. My background, I was a community worker for the council, but also for other organisations. So that's my background, is in youth and community work. I used to run a youth centre, so I'm very mindful for young people coming into the pub, even those that are aged to drink. We're kind of on top of that. We haven't had any hen or stag parties in the pub, and we haven't had any comedy, that might be considered adult. It was just if that's an issue, I don't think it would be a major issue if it dropped off the application. But it was just to try and cover all bases with the major variation.
I've no problem with adult entertainment. It's just allowing young people in, even children more than young people, because young people know more about these things than I do, I think. And it's just making sure that, one of our licensing objectives is preventing harm for children. So I think that's one of the things that we would consider, I would consider, if you were having it on the premises, you might consider not allowing access for young people and children at that time.
Absolutely.
But I'll clarify that with Caroline later on, what's the best way to do that for you. Caroline?
Thank you, convener. Forgive me for my interjection. The applicant said that she was advised to put adult entertainment on our application. It was just to say that, not is, if you are minded at all to grant adult entertainment in respect to these premises, she should take independent legal advice and be very mindful that as of the 1st of January 2023, the Dumfries and Galloway Council's resolution comes into effect legally with regard to sexual entertainment venues. Therefore, depending on the nature of the activity that would be taking place on the premises from the 1st of January 2023, if that activity falls within the definition of sexual entertainment venues, then she would require to make an application for a sexual entertainment venue licence. Much depends on the nature of the activity from the 1st of January 2023. I would just say generally, and this is, she would be required to take her own independent legal advice with regard to this. If it was, for example, hen nights and strippers, then you're going to need a sexual entertainment venue licence, a SEV licence from the 1st of January 2023. However, if it was adult entertainment by way of someone, you know, an individual giving adult jokes, that would fall under the adult entertainment in terms of your operating plan. So it's just to be mindful. It is a matter for her to take independent legal advice on, but to be mindful of this very significant separate legal regime that is coming into play at the beginning of January next year for sexual entertainment venues. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yep.
Ross.
So yeah, I just think from my perspective, I think it wasn't something that had originally marked, and then it was raised that some things around like a hen or a stag do might be considered adult entertainment. We're not really that kind of pub. I certainly wouldn't have a stripper in the pub or whatever. It's a small pub, and it would probably upset other customers. I mean, I'd be quite happy to drop that part from the license. If I was just really unclear as to what was meant, and it was indicated to me that it might be if stag or hen do's brought something in with them, or if it like I say, if it was like maybe comedy that was not suitable for children. But like I say, it's not something I'm planning to do. So if it's something that it's easier to drop, I'm happy to do that.
Councillor Little.
Thanks, convener. I was just thinking, if it was such a thing as a comedy evening that may have an odd joke that may be inappropriate for young people, I'm sure that would be advertised on Ms Ross's, like, the advertisement for that particular event, you know, and leaflets or whatever, posters or whatever. I'm sure we could have, you know, no children, you know, this is adult content, and I think that would clear that up quite obviously. And I think at the door, because it's a small pub, I think you would know if a child had got in. so I think that would be. I wouldn't think it'd be necessary to drop that from it. I understand the word adult tends to sort of feel like you're thinking towards sort of sexual content, but as Mr. Ross said, that when it comes to adult content, it can be anything from comedy or just anything where even lyrics to certain music or certain things can just be inappropriate for young people. And I think that could easily be done on posters for any specific event.
Yeah. Caroline, did you want back in?
Sorry, thank you, convener. It was just to say that if you were to grant adult entertainment at this time, Ms Ross would be able to put strippers on in her premises and have nudity under adult entertainment, as well as the comedian telling jokes. Thank you.
In that instance, honestly, I'm absolutely happy to drop that part of the application. It's not something that I would have in the premises or encourage in the premises. It was just my understanding of adult entertainment was, yeah, that it could be sweary jokes or whatever. But no, that's not something I'm interested in hosting.
What Councillor Little and myself were sort of intimating was, if you were having someone doing adult jokes, then you wouldn't allow access for children at that time. That's what we're looking for. We're not so concerned about you having it on your licence. It's just a sort of undertaking that during those performances that you would consider who is appropriate to be in the pub, and you would take that into consideration rather than dropping it, because, you know, comedian might drop a joke that shouldn't have been in or didn't know. You know, if somebody's interacting with the audience, you can get something which can be quite funny, but maybe not be appropriate. So I would rather see that you would give us an undertaking, whichever way we can do that, that during comedians that might overstep or be post-watershed comedians, that you would look to limit access at that time. Councillor Campbell?
Yeah, thanks, convener. It's just touching on what Caroline was saying. You know, if it's on the licence, she wouldn't be able to stop her from putting, you know, strippers or whatever on there. It's probably a question for Caroline, convener. You know, could we condition it so it is, or it explicitly state that for the likes of adult humour, for example, or excluding strippers, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if that's something that we can consider, but maybe Caroline could keep us right on that. Thanks, convener.
Caroline, maybe you could also clarify, come the change in legislation, it would be up to an applicant to come forward for the new, is it sexual entertainment licence? You couldn't have what they call, I think it's grandfather rights by having adult entertainment. So it may be that over the next 3 or 4 months it would be in the current licence, but after 2023, whenever the date was, it wouldn't be allowed. If you could clarify that. Yes,
of course, convener. So it really depends on the type of entertainment that would be held in the premises. From the 1st of January, if the entertainment falls within the definition of a sexual entertainment venue, then a separate licence would be required in addition to the premises licence under the alcohol regime. If it was entertainment that did not fall within the definition of a sexual entertainment venue, and the individual has adult entertainment on their operating plan, at present, currently, they would be permitted to hold entertainment under their adult entertainment or their operating plan. So, for example, the applicant here is alluding to the fact that she's not really intending to have any kind of, you know, nudity and stag and hen do's, but she's just talking about a comedian. My own views that would fall under the adult entertainment. So if that was granted on her licence, today she could hold the comedian. At the moment, she would also be able to have nudity and strippers, etc. Come the 1st of January 2023, without a sexual entertainment venue licence, the nudity and the strippers, without going into specific definitions, she would not be permitted to have. She would need the additional licence for that, but she could continue with the comedian, with it, perhaps the sexually explicit jokes, etc. But you've also heard the applicant saying that she's happy to drop the adult entertainment requirement from her application. Does that assist?
I think it does. Right, if that's that, would you like to sum up your application, Ms. Ross?
Yeah, like I say, I'm not planning on any strippers or any nudity, and I think possibly one of the reasons we did have a conversation about the adult entertainment with relation to comedy and things was that we're quite a popular pub for the LGBTQ plus community, and so if I had, for example, a drag queen doing drag bingo and they said something risque, I just don't want to fall foul, obviously, of my licence. At the moment, I haven't been in that situation, but it's something I'm mindful of. We also, on the flip side, as I've said, my background is in youth and community work, but on the flip side as well, we absolutely take very seriously obviously the safety of all customers, but we actively intervene if we feel that any women or young women in the pub feel uncomfortable or are being approached and all of that kind of thing. So you know, from a personal perspective, I feel like we always strive for balance, and it's not something that we would want to do. But like I say, with me potentially having a comedian or a drag queen, that's where that comes from. From the rest of the application, it was just kind of adding all the bells and whistles should we intend to carry out any of these activities in the future. We inherited quite a restrictive license, so it was just to add as many of those things on. if there's anything that I can't take forward currently, then I would come back with another major variation at this point when I needed it. So I wouldn't feel defeated. I'm quite happy to take advice and to see what everyone suggests. And it's been good to get that feedback and understand a little bit more about what some of these terms mean on the licensing application.
Right, Caroline, do you want to come back in?
Thank you, Convener. I think prior to going into session, it would be helpful if you can maybe make a decision as to whether you're happy to proceed with adult entertainment request on the application, or whether you wish it to be removed from the application, and Ms Ross consents to that just prior to going into session, so that you're able to just have that discourse now with Ms Ross.
Well, I'll ask you a question then before I make it. Can we condition that when adult entertainment is on, young people and children aren't allowed entry?
Yes.
So that you can have the adult entertainment, but we are protecting the young people and children from being exposed to that, although they maybe can tell us better jokes as what the comedian can. And it's just, that's my only concern. I have no concern what goes on in the pub as long as it's legal, but it's just one of our duties is to protect the young people, and this is how I would like it to happen. So can we condition that as part of the licence?
Yes, you could attach a condition pursuant to protecting children and young persons from harm licensing objective, such that there shall be no under 18 access to the premises at any time when adult entertainment takes place, if that's agreeable to Ms Ross. I know that she has already said that that's agreeable. Currently the request for under 18 access is to all public parts of the premises except the bar service area, and it is a small licensed premises. So if Ms Ross was agreeable to that condition, you may wish to just ask her to confirm that she's agreeable to the condition that there shall be no under 18 access to the premises at any time when adult entertainment is taking place. And then of course it would be for Ms Ross to decide when under 18 should leave the premises prior to adult entertainment taking place. But that's something maybe to ask Ms Ross.
Ms Ross, could you maybe just say whether that is something that you would find acceptable to allow you to have your, if it's a drag queen who says something risky, but it's still giving myself, I don't know what the rest of the members think, but give myself confidence that young people and children weren't in when something like that could happen.
Absolutely, that sounds like an ideal situation. I'm happy to consent to that. Yep.
And if there is no further questions for Ms Ross, we could go into session now. Over to members.
Convener, forgive my interjection. I can see Councillor Little there. It was just to see that the applicant should be given an opportunity just to sum up and commend their application, but I can see Councillor Little's got her hand up. Thanks.
Councillor Little, is it a question or in session?
No, it's an in session, so if I'm happy to wait till summing up.
Right, Ms Ross, would you like to sum up?
Just that I'm very new at this. Just that I think we've kind of brought one of Dumfries's oldest pubs kind of back to life a little bit, to the advantage of Friars Vennel and Irish Street and the area. We've had great feedback from the police whenever we have had incidents at how we've dealt with things. And I've got a great staff team. We've invested quite a lot in the pub to kind of bring things up to standards, like the toilets and things like that, which were in a bad state of disrepair. So having everything kind of signed off, and allowing us to sort of continue to grow and build the community around the pub. I'd greatly appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Councillor Little.
Thank you, convener. Well, as there's no adverse comments or objections to these changes, and to be honest, in times when such hardship within this industry, the growth of this business is positive for the town. It's positive for the community and hospitality experiences for our townspeople, but also visitors. So I'm glad Ms Ross has decided not to drop the adult entertainment, because I would hate to see even any barriers, you know, for further growth. And those little caveats within that report will just sign off on any concerns that any members might have. But I'd like to move to approve and grant this.
I take it that's with if the adult entertainment's on, young people would be asked to absent themselves from the pub.
Yes, well, that's that little caveat, these little whatever it is onto that application. And also, as I said earlier on, I'm sure Ms Ross would put something on whatever posters she had to advertise any event like that, then it would say on it and it would be quite clear. But no, I'm happy to move and grant.
Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thank you, convener. Yeah, I would hate to take the adult entertainment part away from Miss Ross. She comes across as very responsible, in my view, and if we could just attach that condition that no children will enter the premises, I'm more than happy to go ahead with this. Thanks, convener.
Councillor Beretti, are you otherwise minded?
No, I would agree with the summing up, and I have no, from point 4, there's no, no negative comments, and agree with what you yourself, convener, said about the point 10. I'm quite happy to proceed as you've asked.
Right. So Caroline, I think that's unanimous that we'd like to see the agreement to this request with that condition regarding the children and young people when adult entertainment is taking part in the premises. If you could just confirm the decision, please.
Yeah, thank you. So that, just confirming with you, convener, it's a grant for the application in its entirety, with the added condition that there shall be no under 18 access to the premises at any time when adult entertainment is taking place. So that's under 18 access up to age 16 and 17. Okay, yes, convener. Right. So, Ms Ross, you've just heard the board there, and the decision is to grant your application in its entirety with the added condition that you have agreed to pursuant to the Protecting Children and Young Persons Licensing Objective, Protecting Children and Young Persons from Harm Licensing Objective, beg your pardon, that there shall be no under 18 access to the premises at any time when adult entertainment is taking place, and you will be notified of the decision in writing in early course. Okay.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Ross. I have no further business. Can I thank you all for your attendance?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.